Welcome everybody to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your host for the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. Oh yeah. Welcome back everybody to the Little Less Fear podcast. I'm so happy to introduce Jenna Ashland to our show today. Thank you and welcome to the Little Less Fear podcast. Thank you for coming to my show and for sharing your incredible story. Thank you so much.
I'm glad to be here. I'm excited. Let's do this.
Yeah, let's do it. So there's this awesome quote by you that I read on the podcast site where we connected, and it says that you would like to start a global conversation about abuse of both men and women in hopes of sparking change. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely.
So what kind of change would you like to see, and what got you involved with this topic in the first place?
Well, I've been through a tremendous amount of abuse starting from the time I was 4 years old until I was about 12, and I had a little break. And then that continued through like several failed marriages and everything because I kind of learned some really bad habits and those are really hard to break. And so I wrote a couple books. And then after my most recent experience, which was really traumatic and about a decade long with relationship, sexual coercion, manipulation, and rape, which people don't think marital rape exists, but it very much does. I ended up helping the girl after me escape. And that kind of, writing the book and then that happening, it just kind of kept building stronger that things need to change because I see so many people who maybe they escape their abusers, but their minds never escape. And everybody feels alone and they don't feel like they can get any help. And, just learning about men and women, my current partner, who I'm getting ready to get married to in June, he
Congratulations.
has, thank you. He's also experienced sexual assault, but you know what, guys? Nobody talks about the guys, and I don't think they need to be left out. And there's so many people that are dying inside, and they're still their minds and their bodies and everything are still wrapped up in that abuse, even after they leave the situation or they're committing suicide. Like all these people are dying or dying to themselves and they never recover. And I think that can be different. I think that people need to talk and let out the real stuff instead of saying, all of these statistics and everything, which are outrageous, how much sexual assault there really is. But that's all we're saying is, oh, it happens to everyone. And nobody's really getting in deep to what's really going on. And that needs to stop if
Why
we're
do you think
going
that
to
is?
expect.
Why do you think so many people are not like diving deep into it? I mean, the stuff that I recently saw, I think there was a Netflix documentary I saw that was finally released about a woman that came out about when she was a Catholic school girl. Did you see that one? And how like the priests had molested her and stuff, and then it took her coming out to like a lot of other women or young, well now they're women, but at the time they were young girls, like finally coming out. It's like what I mean. I mean, it could be religion in that case, but why do you think, aside from religion, why are so many other people still so closed and not willing to share and talk about this stuff? Is it fear?
It is fear, it is shame, it is backlash. There's a lot of really bad consequences that have happened in the past. And it's just sad and it's ridiculous because, if you step forward, you're afraid of everything, because there's this, silent and not so silent thing where it's like, well, she was asking for it. Oh, she must be a total slut, and the same thing goes for guys, oh, a guy assaulted him. Well, he probably wanted it. How in the world is that even possible? All of those things that are not truth is, the whole thing is surrounded by lies and people don't talk about it. They don't get in depth. They just are afraid to talk about it, or they're uncomfortable, or they're triggered by it. And being triggered is not a bad thing. It just shows you that there's a spot where you need to heal, and you're not going to heal if you don't recognize that you have those emotions and those feelings. And I've talked to a lot of mental health professionals, and they're all agreeing with me, which is pretty awesome, by the way. Whenever people that know what they're talking about agree with you, because I had to face it. I had to really dive deep, man. I mean, it's not an easy journey, but it's worth it on the other side, unless you want to stay, chained up in bondage and of your mind and everything. Then you need to speak out and not be afraid to. And the more people that speak out and the more people that hear these stories, it's going to open up more and more, and that's when healing can start to happen, because right now there's no consequences for these people that commit sexual assault. And I think it's really important to say that men and women both commit sexual assault. It's not just men doing it.
Yes, absolutely. I like how you said bondage, you need to be free of bondage of your own mind. That's pretty powerful statement right there. Could
It's
you
very
tell us a
true.
little bit more about that? Bondage of your own mind?
Whenever you go through any kind of trauma, and it's not limited to domestic violence and sexual assault, I mean any kind, you may not be in that situation anymore, but you get to the point where you're afraid of situations, you're afraid of people of the opposite sex or whatever your abuser may have been. What you tend to avoid those situations, and in so doing, it's like a clamp on your brain and on your mind and on your very being and your soul and the part of you that wants to live and thrive and enjoy life. That clamp just keeps getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, to where you can get into a situation where you're afraid to leave your bedroom, you're afraid to leave your home, you're afraid to leave your town, you're afraid to do anything. And I mean, who wants to live like that? But
Right.
that's what we're doing to ourselves because we're afraid to talk about it.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I actually had a memory while we were talking about this. But I'm trans man. I used to be a female for the first 34 years of my life, and I had some pretty bad experiences as a female. Um, I remember, I remember thinking like after I wrote my book, after I wrote the book about this, how I feel that they should give ladies or female identified humans some type of classes in high school or in college about what's okay and what's not okay, because I mean I would have never known what sexual assault was till I didn't know what that even meant till I was way older, in my 20s. I'm 42 now, but I was in my 20s when I knew what that really meant. And I feel that if we're given some of these survival skills, outside survival skills, that there'll be even less of this type of trauma, because we'll be able to prevent it by having some mental control over it. Like I remember being 18 and this 46-year-old man like just lying to me about his age and that he was divorced when he was married, and he was like 15 years younger. What do you know at 18, And it was just a really inappropriate situation thing that I went through. And had I known, like, like if someone talks to you like this or they flirt with you, this means this could possibly mean this. This isn't because you're just cute and that's it. I mean, there's it can go further and it can go further. And I feel like these skills aren't taught. I mean, is it just me, or are these skills not taught maybe back in the 80s and 90s? I mean, what's it like now?
Oh, I know those skills aren't being taught. I mean, I have three teenagers at home and like a bunch of other teenagers that are constantly in the house, and they don't know these things. I mean,
No,
they
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 don't.
really don't. I mean, my kids do, but but they've seen me go through so much. It's ridiculous. But whenever you're in a situation where someone has power over you, or say you're
Yeah.
like date rape, that's like a really good example of that. Like
Yeah.
you're in a car with someone, you don't want to do something, but you feel trapped and you don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it is. I
Uh-huh.
mean, it really is. I mean, if you don't really feel like you have a choice and you feel like you're in bondage and it's not safe to say no, then that's still sexual assault, and
I
sexual
can't
assault
tell
can be
you.
so many things. And like, I
No.
know it's a minefield, but it really does come down to being able to respect each other and having the knowledge and being empathetic of other people's feelings. If you have that, then it's not a minefield at all.
Yeah. I can't even tell you so many times when I was female identified that I put myself, or I see there's that victim voice, right? I put myself in that situation, but I didn't know that. I mean, I always felt like, okay, if a dude is gonna do this, then you have to give in because you put yourself in that situation. It was a,
Well, yeah, because I mean,
yeah,
what else could happen if you say no? Because it's like, is he gonna beat me? Am I gonna be left on the side of the road?
yeah.
There's
But
like
these
all
things were
these
taught,
thoughts. And
you know?
I mean, even if they wouldn't necessarily do that, you don't know.
Right.
Or, I'm gonna fail this class, or they're gonna say that, I'm some kind of prude or something like that. I mean, there's so much going through a person's mind that really needs to be brought attention to. And I do bring that because, like, in my book, I wrote it in such a way. I mean, it was part of the healing process at first, but whenever I went back and I started focusing not on me, because like halfway through it, my healing was, I was doing pretty good. I mean, it's still not perfect and it never will be, but in that healing process, it became like about everybody else. And I really wanted to help. So my thought processes and stuff and what I was thinking in those moments are very clear, and they're very much there. So a man or a woman, anybody can read this book and have a better understanding. And that's how it's really going to help open up
Yes.
conversations, because it's real. It's not just smacking a label on it. It's not just pushing it under the rug. It is in your face. This is what was happening. This is how I felt. This is how people feel. It's not just me. It happens to men, it happens to women, it happens to everyone, but we don't want to talk about it. And until we really dive deep and really recognize what's really going on, then there's not going to be change.
What is really going on?
What's really going on is we're not empathetic to each other, and we're after what we want, and we don't care about the other people around us.
I see that. I see it. So what other types of conversations can we have to like spark this change?
I think being open and honest, talking about the mindset, learning how to empathize with one another, and realizing that it is not the victim's fault. Like, even if the abuser has a horrible past and maybe they have an excuse, I mean, because that can happen. They have mental health issues. Maybe they were abused.
Right.
Maybe they don't understand. They still need to be able to treat people with respect. And that is why, I mean, it's just so important to have these conversations, because you know what? Some people don't realize they're being abusers. And that's really sad too. And I have a few, like, I mean, the book's title is called Sheila's Men. And I don't hate these guys. I mean, because obviously there's more than one. But I mean, I don't, because some of them, that one of them is an outright narcissist, and he was raised by a narcissist. One was just kind of ignorant, and like some of the others, yeah, it was totally their fault. But regardless of what they've been through, they need to be able to heal and respect each other. And like, how are we going to do that if, okay, so you have, a guy or a girl that has went through abuse, or who has went through narcissism, and or maybe they were beaten as a child or neglected as a child. There are mental health consequences to those things that could make them abusers in the future. But if you open up these conversations and be honest with people, and people learn to respect each
Yeah, we can
other.
actually stop that cycle.
Exactly.
And that's part of ancestral healing as well, right?
Yes, it can be.
That's really fascinating. So then we need more mental health practitioners in this specific field. Do you think that? Or just
I do, but I
people
think
just start talking about it? Just bring it
I
up more
think people
often.
just need to start talking about it, because mental health professionals are already busy.
Yeah,
And I mean, I have the utmost respect for them, but I know that they can only do so much.
right.
And that's why I've been kind of almost preaching, in different podcasts and online, that being triggered is not a bad thing. You get in that emotional place, you need to start writing stuff out.
Right.
Whenever you're,
Mhm.
I mean, write it out. Just be honest. Is Even if it sounds like complete and total nonsense, even if it's, I hate myself, I hate what I've been through, things will start coming. And then whenever you're not in emotional crisis, because that only lasts for so long, go back and kind of start seeing it, and you'll start to see your own patterns. And there's no way to do that if you're not writing it out, or if you're not a writer and you don't like to do that, hit the record button on
Mhm.
your phone and start going back to these things. And that is a great tool to take to your mental health professional, or your trusted support person, that because they can only help you so much with limited information.
Right. Right. That's so true. So what kind of change would you like to see?
I'd like to see all of this stop, or at least slow down. I'd like the shame spirals to stop. I'd like people to start caring about each other, and that's not just with, sexual assault and domestic violence. I think that these opening up this conversation, this is just some little thing that I could do, but it can get a lot bigger, because if we can open up this conversation and people can be empathetic towards one another, that may start with the sexual assault victims and domestic violence victims, to where they can become survivors. But that's not going to stay in that one little spot.
Right.
That's going to go into minorities. That's going to go into your Black community, your LGBTQ. That's going to do a lot more, because it's a character change. It's stopping the cycle. It's opening up and hearing people's stories. Because until we do that, we're going to still hate each other and have these pre-existing ideas that aren't true. And I think what this world needs now more than anything is to understand each other and have an empathetic heart,
How can we be more empathetic?
care more about our care about something other than ourselves.
So if somebody comes up to, hypothetically, somebody comes up to you or somebody comes up to me and they're like, hey, there's something about that I went through in life that I kind of want to talk to you about. And you're like, okay, what is it? And then just hear them out after that. How would you be empathetic if someone came up to you right now and starts telling you about their abusive past?
That is something that I actually have been doing a lot of. I listen, and I mean that's the first thing you have to do. You don't always have to solve a problem.
Hmm.
You don't. You just have to care.
Yeah,
Just listen and care. Give them a hug.
right.
If you have resources or things, even if it's something as simple as, I heard this girl on a podcast. She wrote a book. Maybe look her up. Maybe she has some ideas. Maybe you can find some resources there. Or I heard about this Facebook group, or I heard about this show on Netflix. Whatever it is, you don't have to offer solutions. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to know anything. Just love them as they are.
Absolutely. I'm really glad you're bringing awareness into this because it's like not like you said, not that many people talk about it, and it kind of just puts that whole shame curtain over, like just kind of write it out, and it makes me realize that I've got trauma too from my past, and that I should talk about it because I'm sure it comes up in one way or another in my relationships, and it's just thank you, thanks for bringing that part up. That's part of healing, and it's a beautiful journey actually once you start getting into that healing journey. How do you get into that healing journey? How did you get into it?
Um, like which part? My own healing,
Yeah,
or
how did your own healing start?
oh, I just didn't want to stay where I was. I don't. I mean, that sounds really simplistic, but it just got to the point where I was very suicidal. I was fantasizing about going over guardrails and stuff like that, and or putting my car into the river because I didn't see a way out. And I had three beautiful kids at home and all these talents, and I knew that's not who I was. And it was kind of the realization that I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to continue the life I was living. And there's a really big difference there. And so it was just basically digging deep. And like I started by just writing out what are some things that I really want to do. If I get out of this relationship, who am I? What is something that I'd love to do, and what do I miss doing? And it just started out simple like that. And then I started where I worked, they had a text line where you could text in and talk to a mental health professional. And I started doing that literally every day. I started journaling every time that I got upset about something, and that was every day. And just kind of going back, and I started doing research and Googling things and buying books on psychology. And I just refused to go down without a fight because I knew I was worth more than that.
Yes. So what did you discover within that time when you were finally writing stuff out and being like, you know what, who am I? What do I want to do? What did you discover within that time?
That I was a lot different than the life I was leading, because I I I went from being someone who just worked like 60 hours a week and was managing a jewelry store, to someone who was vibrant and living life and creative again. And that was like one of the things that I had to really fight to get back, because I was around someone who is my fiance actually, and he just sat down randomly and was like drawing a picture, and like it was really good. And I just looked at him and I'm like, man, I used to be creative like that, where I could just sit down and do something. And like that was a moment for me, because like it's something as simple as that. It was just like an epiphany, because here he was just randomly being creative, and he can just randomly pick up a guitar and do all these things and just walk in that. And here I was completely shut down in like a corporate business mindset. And I miss that. I'm like that too. Where did that go?
You were
You know,
like in
it's
robot mode, and then you were able to kind of come back down to your true self spirit and realize that that element was missing.
yeah, very much so. And it would just like, wait a minute, here I am. I was totally jealous of this little drawing on the back of a scrap piece of paper. I was so
Yeah.
jealous, because I'm like, wait, I'm like that. What,
Why can't I
you
do that?
know, yeah, it's like, I used to write poetry and like random thoughts that were like really great. And people used to think that, like, I mean, they, in like school, they were like, oh man, she might be a child prodigy with writing and stuff if you see her stuff. And I'm like, I don't like to say that a lot because it makes me sound like puffed up, because I'm not really like that. But I felt like so disappointed in myself, like in that moment. And I'm like, I'm not going to let this go. I need to get back to that, because that's who I am,
Hmm. Creative
embracing who you
person.
really are instead
Yeah.
of like who everybody thinks you are, is so empowering. And like there were like little things like that that were along the way that kind of just kept boosting. And then I started writing, and
They're kind of like green flags,
um
huh? The
yeah,
green go, go.
yeah. And it once all of that started to happen, it was really fast. I mean, it didn't really take years. It took months, but we're talking about diving in so deep with so much determination that I wouldn't stop for nothing. I was like obsessed with my healing and mental health.
What would you say is the deepest you had to dig? Like, what does that mean anyway? Because you said you had to go deep. Like, what does deep mean?
Okay, so I would journal things out, and I would be like, why do I keep repeating these patterns? Why does this hurt me so much? Why does it hurt me that, well, I mean, that's like even a step, even saying that much is like a step through it. It's recognizing one of my major feelings was feeling like I was not good enough. And I'm like, okay, so why am I feeling like that? Why do I feel like this in every relationship? And I'm like, oh, that's because, my husband cheated on me and he was abusive and manipulative, but there was more than that. So I had to keep going back further.
So you
And
had to basically keep like rewinding and like they say,
yeah,
peeling back the layers of the onion. You had to keep peeling and peeling and peeling.
yeah. And that went all the way back to like childhood,
Wow.
whenever I was, 6 or 7 years old. And I don't know. There's like a whole big mess there, and I'm like writing about it now. But it kind of, my dad was always like, well, second place is first loser.
That was like
And
one of his mottos.
yeah.
Oh man,
And
those things will stick forever, forever.
yeah, I mean, and that like really, really stuck. So how, I mean, with all of
That's
my
pretty
childhood
amazing that
stuff,
you were able to figure that out because you had to keep it's like going through the archives of your life. And you're like, hold on, something must have triggered this. It's like,
yeah.
wow.
So you really do have to go back that far sometimes to like take
Yeah.
that. And then you're like, And then something will trigger and you'll start to have that response, and then recognizing, hey, this isn't like accurate in this moment. Like my fiance would like, oh, she's really pretty, I like her outfit. And like my head would just go nuts. It's like all of a sudden, there's like a million things flying through my head, and
Yeah.
it'd be like,
Then you have to
and
stop it right there. Stop! It doesn't mean that that doesn't exist.
yeah, and being able to say, okay, wait a minute. He didn't say she was hot. He didn't say that she was
Right.
sexy. He's just, because he's a person that appreciates all people and all women. There's beauty in all of them, and actually in a very respectful way. So
Yeah.
I had to learn how to, whenever I would have those thoughts, to just shut it off and see that moment for what it was, and
That's
not for
really
what
hard to do.
in my head were wanting them to be. Because and now, I mean, sometimes if I'm like in a weak moment or hormonal or something like that, it can still have like a little bit of an effect, and then I have to go stop. But now it's just like, now instead of like it being like a million things going off, it's just like one little bell going, wait. And it's like, no, 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 it's okay. He just means this. You're interpreting that wrong. And that takes some time. That
Oh
takes a
yeah.
lot.
Oh yeah. That's a lot of mind training. A lot of mind training.
Yeah, but it's worth it. And,
Absolutely.
having a
Absolutely.
therapist helps, but like they can't help you with that on your everyday life. That's what journaling is for. That's what
Yeah.
not being afraid of those triggers is for. I mean, if you're afraid of every trigger that ever happens,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not going to live your life. And like, just like people and reviewers that are looking at this book, they're like, I can't get through it. This is really hard. And I'm like, okay. Because
Mm-hmm.
like I don't want to hurt their feelings, but at the same time, I know that the people that are being triggered by it are the ones who need it the most.
What do you tell people when they tell you that?
I am very empathetic, and I just tell them, I'm like, okay, well, if you need to talk, please let me know. Let me know if there's anything that I can do. And normally they don't want to talk about it, but I've let them know, hey, I'm here, and I completely understand that this is hard for you.
Oh yeah. That's great.
And then I don't pressure them, because they are where they are in their journey.
Yeah,
And
never pressure. Yeah.
if they're not ready for that, then I understand. But I think more awareness needs to be brought that triggers are not a bad thing. They're a good thing.
Absolutely. Triggers are for change, positive change.
Yes.
How do you talk to, you mentioned you have teenagers, correct?
Yes.
How do you talk to teenagers about, I mean, I've got preteens as nieces and nephews, so I would just question, I guess, how would you even bring that up to them? How do you talk about that stuff? It's pretty sensitive, especially at that age. It's like you don't want to create any type of preconceived trauma either, so it's like it seems like it'd be really tough. How do you bring it up?
Oh, I think it's been like, for me, I kind of probably started talking to them when they were much younger, but in little tiny pieces,
Hmm.
like a little piece here, a little piece there. And a lot of it kind of started with like awareness around social media. Not everybody's who they say they are. Be careful how much information you
Oh,
give,
that's a tough
just
one.
kind of, yeah. But awareness is really important.
Did you say eye awareness?
Just awareness in
Oh, awareness.
general.
Okay.
That's very, very important. And teaching, you have to be careful who you're talking to and let them build trust with you. And, whenever they're little, not forcing them to hug grandma or the uncle that they haven't seen in a year
Right.
is important. Let them be comfortable in who they are, and let them know that their opinions count. I think it starts as simple as that. And then whenever they start to see the real world, because they will, if you're dealing with preteens, they will really soon. Um, you know, then you can kind of start, if you've laid little nuggets here and there,
Hmm.
and you're the type of authority figure or person in their life that has always been open about who they are, then you've got a better chance at really getting into deeper conversations. And I think I just kind of integrated in with the birds and the bees, going, if you're not comfortable with something, you need to tell that person. You need to tell someone. And it really does start as simple as that.
Yeah, I like that. I would have liked that conversation if my parents would have had it with me. I think I probably would have made maybe some better choices. But who knows? Maybe not. I can see there's that mentality again. I mean, it's so interesting. I really want to peel back my onion layers and get down to some of those knots that are in there. Untie it a little
Yeah.
bit.
Everybody's got them.
Yeah.
Everybody really does. And I mean, if they don't think that they have some kind of trauma in their life that has affected that the way they are today, that's not holding them back, then they're probably lying to themselves.
Oh yeah,
And
everyone has trauma. Yeah, absolutely.
people aren't gonna like to hear that. Oh, I'm not lying to myself. That kind of defensive thing. But if you're defensive, again,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just
If you're defensive for a reason.
yeah,
Jenna Ashlyn, correct. Did I say that correct?
yes.
Thank you so much for being on a Little Less Fear podcast. This has been really amazing. I would totally love to have these conversations again. So anytime we want to, or you would like to go ahead and start that global conversation again, let me know. Maybe certain months are like Sexual Awareness Month, or whenever
Yep.
it's some type of reach out to me. We can bring up any one of these subjects that we talked about. We can keep spreading it out and just keep talking about it, like you said.
All right. Well, the more we talk, the more chances more people will hear it, and then they'll talk about it, and then they'll talk about it. But I definitely want to encourage people to go out and buy my book. I actually have two out. One of them dealing with whenever I lost my husband at 30 years old, and there was a lot of trauma and conflict around that. It deals with the 5 stages of grief and healing and learning to trust people again. And there's some sexual assault in there, so be forewarned. And Sheila's Men is my journey through domestic violence and sexual assault that lasted nearly a decade, and how I came out bright and shiny and happy on the other side. So feel free to be triggered and reach out and get those books and start your own conversation. Start peeling back those layers, because you'll
How
see a
can we
lot
find
and
your
you'll learn a
books?
lot.
Where can we find your books?
You can find them anywhere books are sold. The easiest is always Amazon.
Awesome. And do you have a website?
I normally am just kind of stick to social media right now, because with kids and writing and speaking out and doing advocacy and
Oh,
everything,
super
is
busy.
track of like a website itself. So stick with social media. I could go through and give you like addresses for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, but just Google me, you'll find me.
Excellent. Thanks so much for your time, and I will also be posting all of that information on my social media when we get ready to post this. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. This has been great.
Thank you, Jenna.